So whatever we find out eventually happened with this assassination attempt, and there's still a lot we don't know. I mean, even the shooter himself, there's no obvious motive behind, what he did, which is making it puzzling for a lot of people. But one of the other persons that's in the focus here is the head of the Secret Service, Cheadle. And she was trying to explain on a recent interview, I want to start with that, about why that question was posed. There was apparently lots of lead time and advance notice of this guy before he went on. We showed in our show yesterday where there was a lot of time from the time with the video, what the people are saying, they're showing him up on the screen, etc. And there wasn't a lot of action. Watch how she describes what happened.
The shooter was actually identified as a potential person of suspicion. Units started responding to seek that individual out. Unfortunately, with the rapid succession of how things unfolded, by the time that individual was eventually located, they were on the rooftop and were able to fire off at the former president.
Okay, while they were looking for him, they didn't find him until right at the last minute. And oh dang, now actually it's too late.
That's a lie. It's an absolute lie.
So
I mean,
before you jump in there,
you're going to get my blood pressure up.
I am. Let me give it a chance to slow down for about 15 seconds or 30 seconds here, because this is reporting out earlier today.
According to Beaver County, Pennsylvania Emergency Services, they noticed, quote, a suspicious man on the roof near the rally at 5:45 p.m., called it in and took a picture of the person. Keep in mind that the shots were fired in Butler, Pennsylvania, some 6:15 p.m., Ryan. So if that is accurate, that means that the shooter had nearly 30 minutes on or around the rooftop.
On or around the rooftop. Ergo, people knew about it then and no action was taken about it. Now let your blood pressure roll.
Well, we can tell from the counter snipers. So let me give you my background for bona fides on this. When I was at State, one of my jobs was I was the deputy director over the Anti-Terrorism Assistance Training Program. It was a program where foreign police were trained in a variety of skills, including executive protection. So I had familiarity with the course content, what they were taught, how they were taught, and the quality of the instructors that we used. Secondly, after I left government, I worked with a Secret Service agent, then retired, but we did a site survey of a school that where a dignitary's son attended in order to establish what additional security measures might be required at that school. And I also did security evaluations of airports. So I've got some experience with that, but I also have friends who are snipers. Chris Whitcomb, who was with FBI HRT, a buddy named Mike, who was a Delta sniper. So, and I've talked to them over the years. And I am a trained rifle instructor. So I can train instructors. I'm certified to do that. Anybody that's ever been on a rifle with a scope that magnifies, say, times 10 or times 20, knows that when you're down on that scope looking, it's like looking through a straw. You see only a very narrow, you got a very, very narrow field of vision. You can zoom in. And so like as that guy's looking through the scope right there, he is seeing probably the mouth, literally the mouth of the guy on the roof, because that's where the shot went through his mouth. You will also see there's a picture. He's on that scope. He's got the target already. They're already lights on. This Cheadle, she's a moron. She was a Frito-Lay executive. They make Cheetos too. So Cheadle the Cheeto. Okay. But for her to say, oh, that they acquired it, it shows how damn ignorant she is about basic rifle optic operations of a sniper team. With her as the head of the Secret Service agency, for God's sake, she ought to know that, because there's no way in hell that you can be looking up and you say, oh, I think I see a target, and then you can go to the glass and immediately see it unless you were already dialed in. Zero chance you can do it the other way. Zero.
Right. So then that opens up a big question. If he was zeroed in, and all the video that I've seen in a couple of different angles besides what we're showing here make it look like he was right on him and was looking up and then went back down, etc.
Yes,
right before.
absolutely.
So the question is, why did he not engage?
Because he's on the radio. They're communicating with the TOC, with the Tactical Operations Center, and whoever that officer in charge was, it was Secret Service. Secret Service was in charge. They refused to give the order to shoot. Now, one thing that may have added to the hesitancy is we learned subsequently that supposedly there was one of the local police SWAT teams, a 3-man team, was inside that building, and they weren't sure maybe if this guy on the roof was part of them. But again, this goes back to the incompetence of the management of that scene management and management of the overall incident. If you're going to have multiple people, security personnel out moving about, for God's sake, put on a color. Red band, blue band, purple, green, I don't care. Pick the color of the day, wear it, have it prominently displayed, and tell people it's got to be on your left arm or it's got to be on your right arm. And that way you know that if you see a color on the right arm, you know you're dealing with somebody who's part of the team. And if they don't have it, then you know they're a threat. And if they forgot to put the color on and they get shot and killed, too damn bad that they couldn't follow instructions. Because when you're dealing with this kind of security situation, you've got to make sure that you've got people in command that understand that what the rules of engagement are and how people are going to be able to identify friend versus foe. And I mean, you went through that. You went through that as a commander of an armored unit.
PID, we called it positive identification. You cannot engage just yet positive identification. But on that point, so I'm sure you've seen that now famous interview with the redheaded kid by the BBC. He was talking about how he saw these guys, and at least what he reported was he said, I looked at the guys on the barn that sniper, the counter sniper team, and he said, I was waving at him and I was pointing up on the roof and I said, there's a shooter up there. And he said that they saw him, but again, they didn't engage. And it just still remains the biggest puzzle to me. I just can't imagine him not engaging, especially if they said that they were seen, up to 30 minutes earlier. But as I showed in my show yesterday, especially the last 2.5 minutes, there was another. Now people are screaming that there's a gunman, etc. Somebody has to do something.
Yeah, I question whether he was up there for. I question whether he was up there for 30 minutes simply because the temperature on the top of that roof. I don't know if you've ever laid on a roof like that that's in the sunlight, but man, that thing heats up. We've got at the gun range where I shoot regularly, we have a raised gun platform that's basically like that roof. We've measured the temperature here 2-3 weeks ago. It was in excess midday at around 160 degrees. So you could almost fry bacon on it. So, I mean, it can get hot. So somebody like that, and he wasn't wearing insulated clothing to shield off that heat. So he may not have been up there that long. But the point was, he was up there and there was no communication with that sniper team. One of the things that's going to come out is they will have the radio comms between that the counter sniper team and the TOC, and you'll have a record of what they were reporting, what they were saying, permissions they were requesting, and permissions that they were denied.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out, and I hope that it's made public. There's a couple of other aspects that I want to look at here, which are odd, but there's one more thing from Cheadle I want to bring up here that is a little odd as well. She was asked, and this is earlier today, she was asked, why did they not have somebody on that building? Because it was the closest one. It was the most lethal potential target with line of sight that should have been, secured at the very least. And she says, well, that building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, the decision was made to secure the building from the inside. Now, that just doesn't make sense to me on any level. First of all, you're there to defend the president of the United States, so your safety definitely comes second. But the next point is, Why would you want to put somebody inside the building to, quote, secure it when they can't see anything? That doesn't make any sense at all. And then the last one, and Gary found this one. Gary, if you could throw that video up here. Here is the video of the counter sniper team on the barn that you can see.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, it's quite sloped. And then you see the actual place where he was, which hardly had any slope at all. So not sure what she was talking about there.
She has no experience. I mean, she was good at keeping people from stealing Cheetos and Fritos. Okay, that was her experience. Hey, stay away from those snacks. High in cholesterol. Might kill you. But as far as actually physically securing and doing executive protection and making sure that nobody can attack the now it looks like future president of the once and now future president of the United States, obscene. And that kind of lame excuse just exposes her ignorance. She's trying to play varsity basketball and she can't even dribble, So my God, put her on the bench, get rid of her. But absolutely right. With the slope that the counter snipers were on was much steeper than that. What the word I heard was that the counters that SWAT team got up there and went, "Oh, it's hot. Let's go with some place where it's cool and shady." Okay, we'll go down, stand at the base of the building, at least to defend the perimeter of the building so nobody can get up. Because how the hell does this kid get there with a ladder and then with a gun that he's carrying in the open, and then scramble up the ladder, and with all the police and Secret Service that were out there in the area and all the public notices and they don't? Which raises to me the real serious question of that this may have been intentional, that this wasn't just some one-off crazy kid who woke up in the morning and because he didn't have a proper dose of Cheerios, decided he was going to go try to kill Donald Trump.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are not adding up about this. Yeah, there's the one that Gary was talking about where it shows the slope of the counter sniper team, and then that's juxtaposed right away with the much, much less on the shooter side. So there's hardly any. So that literally makes no sense at all.
Yeah, in fact, my buddy Chris Whitcomb, the former FBI HRT sniper, he was questioning. He says, "Why is this guy using a tripod and up on one knee?" He says, "Because that's a less stable platform to shoot from than if you're in a prone position and braced." And he's right. And particularly if you're in a prone position on a sloped roof, man, it doesn't get any better than that. Because one of the problems, you and I may have at our age, and I'm older than you, is when you get down in a prone position trying to get your head up so you can, see through the scope. Well, that way, a piece of cake there. So we don't know why. That's all going to come out in the investigation. I hope Congress does the investigation because I don't trust the FBI or Secret Service to do it properly.
Okay, now I want to shift now to it's still related to the counter sniper team, but I want to go first of all back to the shooter himself. Gary, can you throw up that one picture, the photograph of the shooter that we had before he was killed? You see him looking up here, so he's on the back slope of the building from which he fired. First thing I want to ask you about, since you know a lot about rifles, it appears that his rifle is visible there, but it doesn't look like he has any sort of scope on it at all. Like all he's got is iron sights. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, I've heard two different versions. I've heard he had iron sights and I heard he had a red dot. And so, a red dot for your listeners and viewers, it's sort of like a miniature binocular. It doesn't do a lot of magnification. It can do a little bit, but it's the kind of thing when you look through, it'll put a red dot on the play if it's properly zeroed. And zero means you have set that scope so that wherever that red dot is, that's where the bullet's likely to hit. But the problem with even a red dot, anybody that's ever used one, is when you look through it, even if you're in a prone position, that red dot's going to be doing this. It's going to be moving around because it's what's called the natural arc of movement. Part of it's a function of you breathing. Part of it's just the blood rolling through your veins and arteries. And there's just the only way you get rid of the arc of movement is you've got to be dead. If you're dead, no arc of movement. But any living, breathing person, they're going to have that arc of movement. So even with a red dot, even minor movements of that rifle, even at 150 yards, is going to cause a deviation in the flight of the bullet. And that's what happened here. His first shot, I'm sure he had that red dot on Donald Trump's head, and when he pulled, and I'm sure he pulled as opposed to pressing, when he pulled that first shot, it was headed directly towards the back of Trump's head, and Trump, by turning at the right time, a miracle, it only grazed him, nicked his ear. After that, the subsequent shots were wild. And, I could take somebody out right, today at 70 yards, and they'd have trouble hitting a 10-inch target if I put them on a clock and said, okay, I want you to fire as many shots as you can in 3 seconds. Because
that's the next thing I wanted to ask about, especially because you have experience training rifles, people to shoot rifles. There's also the pressure issue. So according to what we've been told, there was a local policeman who started to climb up the building right before the shots took place. He said that the sniper pointed the rifle at him, so he dropped back down and fell back, and then almost immediately he shot. So that would have meant that the sniper put back on there, put it back, and then pull the first round to fire under the most amazing pressure, because he knows he's been spotted. I want you to talk about the issue of pressure, because from what I understand, again, from what's been reported, this kid was on a shooting team, but was not very good. So if you're just the pressure of just trying to make a team and he's not very good at that, it's just questionable whether he would have been that good under life and death pressure of this kind, knowing you've been spotted, knowing that you're probably in line of sight of those snipers. Because another thing here, we know the snipers had a line of sight on him. I can't imagine any chance that counter sniper would not have been visible to the shooter himself, because the guy was standing up on his knees. So a lot of this stuff just isn't adding up to me.
Well, actually, I could see him not seeing the counter sniper for this reason. One of the things happens that in particular, when you're involved with the shooting, you get a number of physiological changes. You get what's called tunnel vision. Your vision really collapses, so you're not aware of your surroundings. You're so focused on your target, number one. Number two, you get what's called auditory exclusion, where the sound disappears. It may be loud as can be, but you're not going to hear it. Then the other thing is you get time dilation. Time both speeds up real quick and then slows down. And so you'd say, oh man, that seemed like a minute and it was only 10 seconds. Or man, that seemed like 10 seconds and it was 2 minutes. It's that kind of thing. So what training people to shoot, and particularly training snipers, is training people to overcome normal human reactions. Because the normal reaction when you hear a loud noise is, to jump and to breathe, to take in a big gulp of air. When you're shooting, your goal is, with particularly at distance, and particularly for snipers, is to reduce body movement as much as possible. And one of the key ones there is with your breathing, either rhythmic, you got to get into a rhythmic breathing, but then before you break a shot, exhale and make sure you hold your breath. And then you press. You don't jerk, you don't squeeze, you press. And you're just trying to press straight back, and doing that to minimize that you're not getting any movement in that rifle barrel. Because the farther you go away from a barrel with a barrel that's moved, the greater the deviation of the bullet. And so the less likely you are to be accurate. So you can train somebody to do that. And I know, like my buddy Chris Whitcomb, the FBI HRT former guy, he said, they used to practice shooting aspirin. So, they put an aspirin out at 100 yards, but they would scope it in, and the goal was to see who was the first to break the aspirin, the competition. Wow. That shows that kind of precision, and you can acquire that, but it takes a lot of training. This kid didn't have a lot of training. He had some basic... I can
just tell you from my own experience, both using the red dot, if that's what he used, and using the iron sights on an M4 that I had while I was in the service, and now I have an AR-15 type weapon that I use for private security that only has the iron sights, whatever. And it's not that easy to hit with no pressure on, as it is to, like, for example, when I was doing a training or when I was shooting that I was going to get scored on. That's got a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
I'll tell you, though, to your point exactly, and I just want to reiterate this to anybody who may not have experienced it. The very first time that I ever used my weapon in combat, it was an M60 machine gun back in the days that preceded the M240. It was during Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And I can, as clear as a bell to this day, remember engaging with that weapon. But all I remember was just shooting anything that moved. We were assaulting an objective. I had some Bradleys and tanks near me, and I was in a 113 type vehicle, and kind of in between two of them. So I was kind of filling the gaps in between here. I can't remember any of the targets I serviced. I just remembered if something moved, I shot it. So I don't even remember the details of what I hit that.
Yeah, 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 and that's natural. So I could see this kid. He's so focused on, trying to shoot Trump that he would not be aware, may not have seen or even paid attention to the counter snipers. But they clearly had him in their sights, because there's no way that they could go from looking up above the scope, then drop down to the scope, and then get immediate acquisition unless they had already acquired the target.
Okay, and now I want to show you some of that stuff. In fact, that's the next thing the last thing here I wanted to talk about in the time we have left. Gary, if you can bring up that first diagram of the whole area, if you can bring that up. So this is one of them. So you see he had a line of, I think it was 147 is the actual number there from his location. You see that he's on the back side of the center line of that building, and you saw how slightly it was sloped. So he wasn't right up to the crown of the building. He was back up a little bit off of it. And Gary, show me that second diagram if you can, because then it shows it more from a different angle. Yeah, this one right here. So you see that red circle there. That's basically where the body was found. So he was killed in position. So he's that far back, but he's obviously enough, and you could tell in that picture, the photograph that we have, which was taken from nearly the same direction as this pinnacle of the roof angle there. So you can see he's looking up enough to try and acquire the target there. So that's apparently enough to see over the top of it. But that also means that he's enough. And now if you can pop out to the last one there, Gary, so you can see back to the full area. You can see where the counter snipers were on the red barn there on the left side of that picture. So they obviously had him within their sights behind it. So we get back again to that same issue. I guess what you're telling me is we have to wait till we hear the audio recordings of what actually happened there. But I just wonder if you can just kind of even speculate as much as you can what kind of thing might be going on, because you can see in the photograph of the close-up of the sniper teams, they've got comms on, so they can be talking to somebody can be talking to them. See that guy on the right especially, so they had to be talking to somebody when they seen him up there. And even if it was only the 2 minutes and not the 30 minutes it was talked about, why would he not have engaged when he clearly can see a rifle? Because you talked about that he could see, minute detail with that thing. So he would not wonder if it was something else. He would know it was a rifle. And he could tell the kid was not police. Walk us through that. Well,
there was no common communication system linking local police, state police with the federal personnel, with the Secret Service. So you didn't have a unity of communication. So so I'm sure he's calling back to the talk. Hey, we've got this guy, looks like he's young, but we can't tell. Is he local law enforcement or is he a threat?
Okay, I mean, fair enough at that point. But then it seems to me that there would have been no question but that the next thing is, I can't confirm he's not. Get the president out of the way. That's what I think is one of the big holes in this. Why wouldn't anyone in that chain of command say, we have a shooter on the roof, I don't know who it is, get the president down?
And so that raises the issue of, are we just talking a level of incompetence that's almost incomprehensible? Are we talking somebody who was aware that there was going to be an attempt on the president's life and wanted to make sure that it happened? I hate to raise that, but this, with the rhetoric that the Democrats had been coming out with, and remember, we're not just talking rhetoric. Kathy Griffin, comedian, cuts off the head of Donald Trump, holds it up. Snoop Dogg shoots Donald Trump in a video. Hey, entertainment. Shakespeare in the Park in New York stabs Donald Trump. So don't give me this crap. Not that you're doing it. You're not doing that. But I do not accept this nonsense from these people and say, oh, you're unfairly blaming the Democrats. Damn right I'm blaming the Democrats and a few Republicans, because the rhetoric that has been directed at Donald Trump has promoted murder, assassination, and violence. You can't paint it any other way. And so you come back to this, because you're exactly right. Once they said, we're not sure, get the president off. Any commander worth a damn would have made that decision.
So let me ask you the question here then. Who selects the Secret Service detail? Is it the campaign itself? Is it the White House? Do they get a choice in the matter? How much coordination is done between the two? Meaning, how much control do they have over who's actually providing their security?
I really don't know. I don't. I would assume that it's done by Secret Service headquarters. I have had experience with one of Trump's Secret Service details. I attended an event at Mar-a-Lago in November of 2022, and with my wife, and we both carry concealed firearms in Florida, and so we had the firearms in the car, locked up in the console. So we drove on to the Mar-a-Lago compound to park. And a Secret Service agent stopped us and said, hey, you got anything in the car? And I said, hey, I've got 2 firearms secured here in the console. Oh, no, you can't have those on the property. So he didn't stop to check to see what I had, but I let everybody out, and I left, went back, locked him up in a safe at the hotel room. I came back, drove up, and he said, did you get rid of those firearms? I said, yeah. Okay, go on through. For God's sake, check to make sure I don't have firearms, even after I've admitted it. I mean, that is just standard security procedure. No, they didn't do that. No, didn't want to hassle the guest, didn't want to, and when I went inside, no metal detectors. So if I'd been the type of person who was intent on killing Trump and willing to lie to lie, then all I had to do is say, no, I don't have any gun. And then then I would have walked in there with a fully loaded firearm and I could have shot him. So that's my experience. And I went up and talked to the Secret Service detail later that night. I said, hey, guys, I think your procedures need to be tightened up a little bit. And of course, they really appreciated me sharing that with them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just, Larry, there's just so many things about this that just, you really can't tell at this point, at least I can't, whether we're talking some weapons grade incompetence here, some people who thought they were doing the right thing, that they were afraid, they're just not, ready to take the shot. I don't know. I remember, so many times when you've heard about a lot of these school shooting incidents where sometimes the policemen who are there to protect the kids freeze up and don't shoot. So maybe it was something like that. But so many things here just seem to be off the radar of things that are not right. And so what can we do to find out about this? I mean, can the Secret Service investigate themselves? Can the FBI do it? I mean, what do you think?
There needs to be an independent commission set up, and Congress needs to appoint it, and they need to be empowered to do so, because Secret Service should not be allowed to investigate it itself, nor the FBI. Neither can be trusted. They've lost our trust. Their actions over the last 3-4 years have demonstrated they can't be trusted, and nor should they be trusted. You forfeit that trust when you lie like they have lied. And how do we know that the FBI suppresses evidence? Hunter Biden laptop, 3 words. There we go. We knew that they suppressed that evidence. Hey, FISA warrants to go after people like Carter Page. They lied. They presented false evidence. light in that. So FBI, zero credibility.
So who is both credible and qualified to do such an independent investigation?
So I would have the sergeant at arms in the House convene a group of former Secret Service and military personnel from special operations. So you'd want people from either Delta or SEAL Team 6 that have done executive protection details. Also some from some of the SF units. They've also carried out those missions. Because, we're not talking rocket science here, Danny. I mean, my God, this is where basic common sense comes into play. You survey an area, you say, okay, what are the avenues of approach? What are the risks where somebody could get it up and shoot and have a clear line of sight? So we got to shut those down, or we got to make sure those are secured in such a way. And we've got to control the access points. It ain't complicated. But even though it's supposedly simple, the Secret Service on this one, man, they screwed the pooch.
Yeah. Well, ironically, a good portion of me hopes that it was just incompetence and just, terrible decision making, as opposed to something else, which you have alluded to, that, there could have been some intention behind some of this, because that would be a lot darker of an issue. And then we'll have a much bigger problem if we find out something like that.
Oh, man. Yeah. Just imagine if Trump would have been dead, and if he was dead today, what the chaos that would be unfolding at the Republican convention.
Yeah, and in America,
unimaginable.
Beyond even that, of course. Yeah. But we don't know those answers right now, but we're going to continue watching for them. We really appreciate you coming on today, Larry. Always appreciate your expertise, and especially in this area. I didn't realize you had so much of that, or I probably would have had you on earlier. But
That's all right.
As we continue to find out, more information, especially as, even initial investigations get done and we get some information out, and especially if I want to hear from the shooter, the counter sniper guy that's been featured in all those photographs on the top of the barn. And I want to hear the communications between them. I mean, those two things right there will tell us a whole lot, I think.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
So we'll look forward to having you back on as soon as we have that, and we'll continue investigating this and bringing the information to you as we have it. So thanks for coming on, Larry.
Thanks, my friend. Good to be with you.
Always good to have you, and always good to have you too, folks. We always appreciate you. Without you, we wouldn't even have a show. And as Gary likes to say a lot, we're all in this together, and truly we are. We appreciate you very much. We don't take you for granted. Do ask you to like and subscribe, especially if you haven't. I know a number of folks are watching this show that haven't subscribed yet, but I ask you to do so, because that really helps us all out there. Thank you very much, and we will look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.